Well, that brings up an awesome point that I don't know if you've ever read John Eldridge. He's a counselor, but also a great writer and author, particularly of a very famous book called Wild at Heart, which we actually did
I
an
know that
episode
name.
on.
Yes.
It's just about masculinity, and he wrote another one about femininity called Captivating. But he says something very interesting in there that I've thought really resonated in my own heart. So, like most people, I've been to therapy before, and I found it utterly unhelpful. And here's
Uh-huh.
why. Here's why. Because as he points out, he says understanding is not the same thing as healing.
Mm-hmm.
Because counseling gave me some great insights into myself, into my past, and that was very helpful. But I was like, well, but I'm still got the wounds,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
So how does healing occur? And you mentioned like Jesus is the real healer. And I think
Yes.
I think God can directly heal our
Mm-hmm.
hearts.
Mm-hmm.
What's your insight? And then I'll share another insight I think about
Oh man,
healing.
there's so
But
many
what is
different ways in
yeah, how
which
does healing
Jesus is the
occur?
healer. So, okay. Well, it is that first recognizing that he has been through everything before. He knows what you're going through in a way that one of the biggest struggles is people go, well, how could you help me when you don't understand? You could never really know what I've gone through. I
Hmm.
had a client recently say, you look so unmoved. And I'm like, oh, wow, it's true because I haven't lived, I don't, you're
Do you want
telling
me to
me these
cry?
things. Yeah, you want me to cry? I'll cry with you. Nah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, it made sense. Like she wants someone to feel what she's felt.
Mm.
And it's
Hmm.
that as a, as God, he knows what I'm going through. I would even dare say better than I know what I'm going through.
Agreed. Yeah,
Right. And
definitely.
there's something um, so healing even just in that because it's like I'm not alone. Suddenly I'm not alone.
Mm.
That's one thing. And the other is that he's left us with so many beautiful I can think of Our Lady and like, okay, women who were infertile. They've got Saint Elizabeth, Our Lady lost Jesus. He died before she did. Those
Sure.
so different stories like that are very helpful
Oh, absolutely.
and
Many of the saints experienced family turmoil. I
exactly.
think of Saint Rita of Cascia, whose husband
Yes.
was abusive and a member of the mafia, and
Mm-hmm.
so there's so many of
Husbands and
parents or who know. I
yeah,
mean,
infidelity and it goes
lives
on
of
and
saints.
on.
No
Yeah,
saint came from a perfect family except for Jesus.
exactly. Well, that's led
you
to
know.
their sainthood, right? And I think it's that. I think you mentioned gratitude as one piece, reconciling, and also kind of looking at what am I to do with this? You allowed this to happen to me,
Mm.
so that's another piece of like, wow, okay, he allowed this to happen. So what am I to do with this? Not why,
So seeing it in the light
but
of God's
in
providence,
God's providence
like this is
and
for my sanctification, for my
yeah.
development. So what's
Mm-hmm.
the lesson? What's the takeaway?
And to help and coming into humility of like
Yeah,
help me go through this because it's too heavy,
sure.
and so having to surrender that. And that's tough because not I mean this is obviously very much counseling from a Catholic perspective, and like we have secular clients who are like that's not for me, and so how do we help them? And
But some of
it's
the themes of like virtue and especially I think
exactly.
forgiveness is probably a big piece. And
Yes.
forgiveness is something that is a universal,
Universal.
certainly a lot easier with
Hmm.
Christ.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
without Christ, I don't know how you'd
Yeah.
forgive, but
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, you even just philosophically, which I love. I'm learning more and more about St. Thomas Aquinas through my husband, but philosophically, you enslave yourself by
mm,
not forgiving.
yes,
So that
exactly.
person is still winning over you because you are now
Right.
in your own little hell. Reading Dante is great for that too. What circle of hell are you letting yourself stay in because of
Yeah,
the hurt that you are allowing to live over and over again? And at some point, we have to make a decision, and that's the other part of healing is when as soon as just as we decide to follow Jesus, we also have to decide to move on,
hmm,
to move forward. And what does that look like? Well, that's part of the conversation you need to be having with our Lord.
yeah. And I think John Eldridge goes on to talk about another instance of healing that I think is very important in that piece. So of course God can heal us directly through prayer and through just the grace He pours into our soul.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of the wounds that we carry are because we've believed lies
Mm.
about ourselves, about others, about God, about the world.
Yes. Yeah.
And so what we have to do is first of all recognize the lies we've believed,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard though to overcome a lie just by itself because we need to have experience of the opposite. And a lot of times I've found in my own life, God will give me the experience of the opposite. So, for example, if the lie I believe is I'm not good enough, then he's calling me perhaps to master some skill or to step out in faith and do something difficult where I
Right.
can say, wow, with God's grace and strength, I've
I
conquered
am.
that
Yeah.
and I am good enough. And now I've
Mhm.
kind of proven that, and I've weakened the strength of the lie in my life
Beautiful.
and stood upon the truth,
Perfect.
you
Yeah.
know.
It's the and all of these things, like you're saying, the wounds. Well, the wounds left you with a belief, and it may be a belief about yourself. It may be a belief about the world. It may be all of it, And it's like, wow, okay, is that actually true? And therein lies the lie.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, where do we? Now that I've recognized it as a lie, what is true?
Right. And I think we have to sometimes be proactive in that healing to pursue things that are going to teach us the truth and not the lie.
Yeah.
So for example,
Mm-hmm.
if I am a kind of person who says I can't do this, then maybe we really have to sign up for a class
Yeah.
or put ourselves out there, and a lot of times we kind of retreat into our safe space.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes our safe space is not the healthy space
Mm-hmm. That's
because you
right.
have to go out and live your life in
Live.
the world. And
Exactly.